let me just say about that bill, and I'll make another prediction. It is a very carefully crafted piece of legislation. Somehow it's being brooded about in the mainstream media. This was put together by a bunch of used car salesmen. The author of this bill is Chris Kobach, one of the best constitutional lawyers in the United States of America, who served under John Ashcroft in the INS for several years. On close scrutiny, there is no question that this bill will pass constitutional muster. The law merely asserts Arizona's right to concurrent jurisdiction in enforcing what has been federal law since 1952. It does nothing to preempt federal law, that is to say, it is entirely in keeping with federal law. The law has also been carefully tailored to withstand any scrutiny on racial profiling. By the way, there's also a curious notion that states can have nothing to do with immigration. Now, immigration is primarily a federal responsibility, but states have passed legislation on many occasions for enforcement purposes. In fact, the state of Arizona did so in 2007 for employer sanctions, and that legislation was declared constitutional by one of the most liberal courts in the country, the Ninth Circuit in Seattle. So the fact of the matter is it's a good law. Now, I don't know if the president, by the way, I know he's directed Eric Holder. I don't know if he's directed Al Sharpton to go to Arizona, but the Reverend Al is on his way. He could never miss a show like this. And according to the Washington Post, the Reverend Al has good ties to the White House. It is going to be one hell of a circus, I promise you that. Now, if the president were eager to take this on, Arizona has given him the opportunity for some grand speech making. That's pretty much all this president knows how to do. But it looks as though he's about to punt. He almost never gives news conferences anymore. He was convinced by the mainstream media during the campaign that he's Jesus Christ and that he walks on water, and now he doesn't really believe he even has to respond to the White House press. But on Air Force One, about a week ago, when the plane was over Appalachia, he kind of walked back and decided to talk to the reporters, and he told them, Congress and the country don't seem to have much of an appetite for immigration reform. It's a matter of political will, he said. We don't seem to have it. We've gone through a tough year. We passed our Obamacare. We've got a lot of work to do on energy. Midterm elections are coming up. This was a speech that Nancy Pelosi might have written for him. The point is the president punted. Now the leading Republican senator, right now the only Republican senator prepared to support any immigration reform, has deserted the Democrats, and strongly allied himself with everyone now who is saying that there must be absolutely secure borders before anything will be considered. Of course, I'm talking about Lindsey Graham. Of course, Harry Reid is running around looking to modify his non-existent bill to try to get another Republican to sign on, but that would have to preempt energy and the climate bill, and that's extremely unlikely. Had Arizona's bill not been signed into law, with the strong possibility of Lindsey Graham's defecting, my guess is that the extremely risk-averse president we have would have talked about the issue, but he certainly would not have ordered the congressional equivalent of Tennyson's Light Brigade to charge into the Valley of Death. My guess is the president is not going to order that charge, and he would certainly not lead it. But there's more trouble in Dodge City, and Lindsey Graham, again, has a starring role. Graham is key, once more, because he is the only Republican who's collaborated with Democrats in crafting both immigration reform and the climate energy bill. Reacting to reports that Harry Reid wanted to push his immigration bill ahead of the other bill, Lindsey Graham had a complete meltdown and a snip and went storming off, angrily denounced he would not take part in any negotiations to forward the climate bill. Now, he's taken a lot of heat in South Carolina, a lot of heat from Republicans about doing this. He's an ambitious man. He hasn't enjoyed it very much. And his reward has been to be preempted by Harry Reid. Now, Graham is correct in understanding the politics here of Senator Reid is not, although Senator Reid does have a very compelling emotional reasons for seeing it differently. The climate energy bill has already passed the House. Okay, it's a bill that could actually happen. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but it could. Graham, Kerry, Lieberman, and others have spent time doing the things that legislators have to do. They've met with key legislators, business groups, advocacy organizations. virtually with everyone who's got an influential voice in that debate. It's not going to be easy to move this bill, but at least they've done the groundwork. Immigration reform is not anywhere near the same shape. It's nowhere. The House has not considered any legislation on the subject. There have been no meetings with stakeholders, no sessions with key legislators. When members of Congress talk about climate reform, they're talking about a bill. When they talk about immigration reform, they're talking about the electoral usefulness of coming up with one or not coming up with one. I don't know a single person who is not paid to be optimistic about immigration who thinks this bill will pass. Now, on the other side, there is no joy among Democrats. There is a wide chasm in the Democratic Party between Senate leadership and House leadership over the wisdom of bringing in a bill right now. And this situation is going to get very fraught and very nasty publicly because people's careers are on the line. Majority Leader Reid wants that bill. He's not getting reelected without that bill. He's got 15% Hispanic vote in Nevada, and he counts on every one of those voters. It's not certain whether he's got a green light, an amber light, or a red light. He thinks he can capitalize on the Democrat victory on health care. I think someone should remind him that about 58% of the American people want repeal, but he's saying, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead on immigration reform. Now, he did that, and within 48 hours, everything changed, if you remember. Suddenly, a humiliated, dejected-looking Harry Reid was backtracking, very sullenly eating humble pie. The most plausible explanation is the White House jerked his chain. They said, Harry, not now. Now, right now, we're in the situation, it's kind of like preparing for a World War I style offensive. The White House is blowing smoke toward the enemy trenches to obscure its troop movements, and it will continue blowing smoke. The problem is the wind is blowing in both directions, so it doesn't know what it's doing any more than it knows what's going on the other side. Now, Harry Reid is like the most desperate illegal alien in America. His whole survival depends on this bill now. And if it doesn't happen, I don't think it's going to be enough for his voters in Nevada to say, Harry, what did you do? You know, what's happening? Or if he moves forward with the bill and it gets trounced, it's not looking very good for Harry either. Now, what's ratcheted up pressure on the Democrats are threats from a very mercurial gentleman, and I'm using that term very generously. I'm talking about Representative Luis Gutierrez of the 4th District Illinois, who said he will campaign to keep Hispanic voters home on Election Day to punish the Democratic Party if it does not introduce a comprehensive immigration bill. As you know, he recently spent a few days, I think the night in the slammer, for getting involved in the demonstration. I don't know what he's going to do is deck a Capitol Hill cop and spend 3 months there, and maybe the rhetoric at least will quiet down for a while. Now, his threat is not necessarily idle, and the White House and Democratic leaders are trying to figure out how seriously they've got to take this guy. His own erratic behavior on immigration is not a very helpful thing. I mean, they really need to bring in a team of psychiatrists and sit down with Congressman Gutierrez and find out what the man is really thinking. Now, you may remember some months ago the bill he introduced. He introduced an amnesty bill some months ago, House Bill 4321, that is so preposterous, so loopy, so nutty, that only someone who understands there can be no immigration bill in the 111th Congress would ever have authored it. And by the way, one of the main reasons I believe no bill will go forward is the nature of the bill the Congress may support. I mean, there's not even a fig leaf there for those Republicans willing to sell their souls for an imaginary guest worker program. Let me just, you know the same, you know where the asterisk is. There's no such thing as a guest worker program because the guests never leave. I'll spare you a detailed account of Representative Gutierrez's bill. It really doesn't deserve being dignified that way. But I'll give you a couple of choice snippets to give you a sense of where this man is coming from. The bill would amnesty felons. That seems reasonable. It would end all 287G agreements which enable local law enforcement to carry out immigration law. And of course, Arizona's bill is, as it were, the mother of all 287G bills. It would end job verification for all employees, and it would triple visas. Triple visas, okay? It was bad enough we thought they only wanted to double immigration. No, he wants to triple it. But I saved the best for last. Advocates of amnesty have long argued harangued us, with pious utterances about the moral requirement to provide illegal aliens a quote-unquote earned pathway to citizenship. I mean, it just tears at my heart. That language is meant to conjure up the image of self-sacrifice on the altar of civic virtue, a quasi-religious rite of passage on the road to that sacred destination, American citizenship. Well, what is the cost? What is the sacrifice? And Representative Gutierrez's bill? One-time fee of $600. That's pretty much the same thing as it would cost a pay gig to travel from LA on a 2-night trip to Las Vegas, airfare included. That's pretty much the deal.